Good morning, this is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. PsychicTarot.ca, book your tarot reading and unlock your spiritual journey. And the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids and cubs, and welcome to Season 5 and episode number 815 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. Oh, Canada, always 100% Canadian. Today, recording day is Friday, December 19th, 2025. Less than a week before Santa comes. What's that, Alistair McBear? What's that? Oh, well, yes, you have indeed been a very, very, very good boss this year. I'm sure Santa Beaver will be very, very, very nice to you. And could I have a raise? It's true, yes. Alistair is lurking in the background today. There we go. Let's give him a little more visibility. There you go. That way you can see my boss doing his very, very, very arduous work. Every time I come to the Ottawa Beaver Lodge, it's performance evaluation day for some reason. I don't know why. He runs a very tight ship. All right. He's tough, but he's very fair, and he pays in wonderful, wonderful, wonderful cuddles. Plus, you can tell him anything, and he never gives away your secrets. He also never trumps your ace lead. He's a good bear. Kids and cubs. It's a lovely day today. Well, actually, it's not such a lovely day here at the Beaver Lodge weather-wise. It is very, very dark and dingy, and from the cars that I hear on the street, it seems like it probably is raining, I would guess, or slushy or something that's not great. We had a warm day yesterday, actually. I think it went up to about 7. So a lot of stuff melted and got wet and a little slushy yesterday. Hopefully it didn't get too cold and everything just didn't turn to ice. Maybe that's what I'm hearing too. Who knows? I haven't looked out the window yet today. All right. A big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Pepper Master, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.ca. If I haven't mentioned it, I'm your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver Ray, and not with me as usual is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. But don't worry, kids and cubs, because you're going to get your dose of Grizzly tomorrow when we have our Christmas PubCast. Yes, I'm very, very, very excited about it, kids and cubs. And as well, if you will just bear with me for 1 second. I will be appropriately attired. So I brought the frock. You guys need to bring the company. And then we will all have a wonderful good time. So I hope that you'll join us tomorrow, Saturday, December 20th. And I believe probably around 1 or 2 p.m. Eastern time. I haven't confirmed with Mr. Grizzly, but usually our start time is 1 or 2. And we will have a couple of potent potables or impotent potables, depending on what is your preference. We will be hopefully telling some jokes and having some good time, talking about life, talking about travel, finding out how Mr. Grizzly's vacation went, for example, all that good stuff. Anything but religion and politics. All other subjects are fair game. It's an opportunity to get to know another side of your favorite beaver and favorite grizzly. Because for those who are newer to our podcast, we like to show that even though we do a political show 5 days a week, sometimes more, depending if there are specials, that politics isn't the entirety of our identity. We have other stuff going on. We are well-rounded people, and you should be too. Right? Politics shouldn't be everything going on in your life. You should be engaged in politics. Absolutely. Don't let it pass you by, because then people are making decisions that concern you without you. But it doesn't have to be your entire identity either. It's not like you got to tattoo the team jersey onto your body, right? You can take it off and give it a wash now and then. Just saying. A little April fresh wouldn't do a lot of people a lot of harm. I'm just saying. All right, kids and cubs, how is your mental health doing today? Mine is doing rather well, I have to say. Still a little sleep deprived, but I got more sleep last night than I have any night this week, which is good. Tonight, I'm looking forward to a whole lot more. Having, I don't want to say difficulties with motivation. It's not so much motivation. I'm having a little problem with focus the last few days. Part of that is, I won't lie, my beaver sweetie. I love him very much. But there's a meme going around. Unfortunately, I can't show you clips from the Ottawa Beaver Lodge, so I might have tried to show it to you. But there's a meme going around, sort of meme clip, or one of these TikTok sort of clips, where it's sort of it's called "Every Gay Couple at the Airport," and the guy in front, who's like has this interior monologue. Okay, so I parked the car in the garage level B2 slot number 46. If we walk over here, we can get there. It will take about 3 minutes and 26 seconds to get to the gate, unless so and so unless we stop and have a snack, and probably somebody and my partner will probably need to go to the bathroom along the way. Like this, and you got that whole monologue, and he's thinking. Then the camera cuts to the partner and what's going on in his head. It's, da 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 da, talking sweet and looking right. It's like, and that's exactly my partner and I, except for Alex, instead of like a nice little ditty, he's thinking about math or equations or science or something. He goes to his happy place. But yeah, I make a plan. My sweetie blows it up. That's our thing. That's our dance. So, so yeah, I sit down and get into a groove, and the phone call rings, and sweetie, I need you, and then I'm off doing something else, right? So, I've had a little trouble focusing because my beaver sweetie was trying to get a lot accomplished before the 23rd, when his contract at the lab runs out. We got a little bit of good news. He got extended for another month, so he will be able to complete all the research that he was trying to cram into 4 days, and he'll be able to do a little more with a bit of a breather. So things got significantly less stressful at the Beaver Lodge yesterday, which is a good thing, because Christmas is sometimes, stressful enough. So, but yeah, it's definitely an opposites attract thing, but it works. It works. He's my boo. I love him, even though he's also Hurricane Alex. Like I said, I walk in, I make a plan, the whole day is planned, and then he just breezes in, and then then I replan. Kid Saucy goes, I think mine is learning to stay out of my tornado. Just get sucked in. All right. I like that. Everybody's saying that's just how that's how couples work, really, eh? Gee, one's the planner and one's the bohemian. Oh god, and I am like really a planner, like plans on tops of plans on top of plans on top of plans, and then a contingency in case that it's needed. And still, sometimes all of those get blown up. My beaver sweetie has very, very, very special talents and gifts. That's all I will say. And clearly, I must like it because it's been 13 years. So no matter how many times internally I go, "Ugh, why can't you stick to a plan?" Clearly, he's sticking to the most important one, which is thinking that I'm absolutely delightful and wonderful, despite the fact that I get frustrated when my plans get blown up. All right. So hopefully your mental health is going well today. But yeah, I've been having a little trouble with focus because mainly I keep on getting my focus pulled away from what I'm doing. I'm also getting to the point where and this is a point that you probably have been at for a long time. I seem to have more endurance or higher threshold for pain, but I'm starting to get tired of the news a little bit too. It seems to be often the same thing, just going round and round and round, different players, different variables, but essentially, the same constants, which is a um, not fun, really, in certain things, in certain aspects. But yeah, it's like there's just been a lot of news of late, and it would be nice if the things slowed down a little bit, which they are at the moment. It usually does this time of year, but yeah. It would be nice to have a little more variety. There are times where I'm planning shows and I'm listening to things, and my mind just starts to wander, and then I have to go back and listen to it again, as opposed to like being in there. I'm finding myself a little more distracted than usual, and that probably could be a sleep thing as well. But just it's a busy season as well, so that just goes with the territory. Um, Also, on the upside, kits and cubs, it is finalized as of yesterday. My beaver sweetie and I will indeed be going on vacation this year. I really, really, really need one. So, yeah, haven't had one since February 2020. So, this is a well earned. It's going to be 3 weeks. I've decided to take. Normally, it's a one or two thing, but this year I am taking 3 because I'm worth it. A little bit of be kind to and gentle with myself. I'm a little sad because it is happening during the Olympics, so I'm hoping I will be able to watch some while I'm there. I'm hoping that I can still tap into the CBC Gem while we are in beautiful, sunny Mexico. Yes, kits and cubs. We are going to Mexico. We are going to support our NAFTA 2 or CUSMA or MUCA or CUSMA, whatever they call it in all 3 of our countries. But yes, we are going to support our good friends and our good neighbors economically in Mexico with our dollar. Direct flights, so we do not stop in any way, shape, or form in the United States, because we ain't giving that nation any more of our money than we absolutely have to. We're just not. So, yeah, not don't even want to stop over through the United States. The United States is now flyover country, honey. That's all I'll say. So, hopefully nothing happens with the plane that we have to stop in the United States, because I'm sorry, but when you look like this, and after September 11th, everybody thought you were Muslim, and there was a complimentary 2-hour interview or extra search with every plane ticket for about 3, 4, 5 years. And now you're seeing people who are various shades of brown just being picked up and put into the back of a van. I'm not too keen on spending time in the United States. This is the one time that being unidentifiably ethnic looking doesn't serve me. When I'm acting, it's great. We need a black guy. Hey, I'm half black. Because whatever, you need a Mediterranean guy, I can pass. You need an Italian guy? I could pass. You need a Muslim guy? I could pass. You need a Persian? I can pass. So, just put me with other people who are various shades of brown or olive, and I just sort of camouflage and blend in. So, but um, in this particular case, after September 11th, and right now with what's going on in the United States with all that racism, um, and weird immigration policies, I don't want to be unidentifiably ethnic. I want people to know exactly what I am. Oh, thank you so much to, I wish I could see who it is. I'm going to pop it up on the screen there. That's Kit Bucky, is it? I can't tell. The writing is so small on my phone screen. For making a contribution through our. Oh no, is that Miss? I can't tell now. With that name. Sorry, YouTube. For those who are listening at home, YouTube has changed the names of our DamFam members. So I'm trying to learn them all over again on the chat. Get a beaver tattoo? No, 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 no. Tattoos are wonderful. They're great. I love them on other people. My joke about tattoos is that other than my beaver sweetie, I have not found something that I want to be on my body for the rest of my life. So, yeah, not doing that. Interesting. That we're going to Mexico because in the news lately, there was some information. It's been denoted. Denoted, is that the word, or noted? It's been noted that Canadians are traveling to Mexico much more than they have been of late. According to the CBC here, this is about 4 days ago, according to Karen Pauls, as Mexico sees steady growth in Canadian tourists, the U.S. is experiencing, sorry, the screen just jumped here. So I have to get back to where it was. And it seems that the article, when it first appeared, did not show the start of the article. So I will start over again. Charles Burt and Marilee Mullard are doing what many other Canadians have decided to do, pulling the plug on their annual trip to Texas and opting to travel in Canada and Mexico instead. They usually spend weeks or even months at a trailer park in Weslaco, Texas, about 10 kilometers from the Mexican border. But not this year. Quote, since the election of Trump and the insults that he placed on our country, 51st state and all of that garbage, we decided that no, we're not going to spend money down there, Burt said. We've had rumors of people being mistreated or where they see your license plate and they'll tell you north is that way. We've never run into that, but we didn't want to support an economy and a government situation that was basically cruel and mean to us and wanted to take us over. The couple traveled to the West Coast via the Rocky Mountaineer train this fall, and they're heading to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico in the new year. That's where we're heading. Maybe we'll see them there. Quote, you can make the choice. You can support Canada, which is exactly what we did and are doing, and support Mexico. We need to support our friends because Trump is trying to do a number on them too, and we need to stand together. They're not the only ones making that decision. The number of Canadians flying to Mexico increased 11.3% between January and September compared to the year before, an increase of almost 200,000 tourists, the Ministry of Tourism in Mexico says. Resort operators in Mexico are seeing that bump. At the 8 Mexican resorts, Melia Hotels International, they're reporting a 22% increase in the number of Canadians compared to 2024. Maybe that's why our lodging cost so much when we were booking it. It's our lodging is 4 times the cost that it was when we went 4 times the cost. We're also staying an extra week than we did, but 4 times the price than we paid last time we went. So, maybe if you don't add the extra week, do 2 and something or low 3 and something times. But we also made plans a little late, so that might have something to do with it as well. But if there's that much more demand, then prices for lodging have to go up. right? Supply and demand. I do think that there is a Trump effect, but I don't think it's only a Trump effect. I think that definitely Mexico is an attractive possibility for Canadians to come, and we see that reflected in the numbers, said Sarah Rangi, marketing director for Malia Hotels International. So yes, it is an opportunity, said Rangi, who visits Canada annually for promotional work. As Mexico sees steady growth in Canadian tourists, the US is experiencing a decline. Rangi says they've noticed it at their 2 American properties in New York City and Orlando. Data from Tourism Economics and the U.S. National Travel and Tourism Office reveals a 24% drop in Canadian tourism to the United States during the first 6 months of 2025. Major cities such as Las Vegas down 50%, and Las Vegas is one of those bellwethers because it's typically a city that you visit for the purposes of spending money, right? Gambling, shows, entertainment, that type of stuff. And usually it's right, it's discretionary spending. So, like I said, there's a drop of 50% in Las Vegas. So that gives you an indication. New York down 46%, Honolulu down 41% are being hit hardest, said Amra Durakovic, communications director with Flight Center Travel Group in Toronto. Florida remains the most resilient, but it is down 22%, she said. And lately, Doug Ford made another attempt to play Captain Canada again. I don't know why he keeps doing that, because the shine has worn off and we're not buying it anymore. But I go to Florida all the time, but I'm not going this time. Oh, no, not with Trump. It's not Americans. You're all lovely. It's just this one guy. It's just like, come on, Doug. It's like the Captain Canada thing worked for you when you brought it out in time for the snap election you called. But you haven't been all that protect Ontario since then, really. So, there was another, meeting, as we mentioned, right? Prime Minister with First Ministers yesterday, and you had Doug Ford standing in front of a microphone talking about that ad again. Prime Minister has also been doing some year-end review questions, right? And he's being asked about that, and it seems like the Prime Minister is confirming, there was wording, there was sort of a deal on the table with the sector tariffs. We weren't completely there yet, but we were working to it, and that ad did kind of blow everything up. And then you have Doug Ford back in front of the mic once again, still unrepentant. Well, it got so many views and clicks, blah, 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 so it was a good thing. And Mark Carney in the back going, making that face he sometimes makes. I don't know about that. Doug Ford still thinks it was a good idea and thinks it's still a good idea to step in front of the mic and needle the people in America. And I mean, it did work. He did get Ron DeSantis, or Ron Death Sentence, I should say, to react. So Doug Ford seems to have that special skill of getting under Republicans in the United States' skin. The problem is that sometimes he freelances just a little too much. Let's put it that way. The whole thing with the ad, even though it felt good, even though it was a good ad, even though it did rub the Americans, and I'm not talking about all Americans here, I'm talking about the Trump stuff, their nose in it, like they were a dog who piddled on the floor. And even though that was extremely satisfying, we had to know that there was going to be blowback if we did that. Right? Like I said, I'm not entirely sad we did it, because they had it coming, but it came with consequences. Fortunately, some of those consequences, and don't tell Trump, actually fits in with our plans, because, since we're trying to drag our heels, him saying, well, I'm not going to talk to you for the next while. It's like, oh no, whatever will we do? Go ahead. You're going to run out the clock more when we're already trying to run out the clock? Oh, gee, that would be a shame. No wonder Mark Carney's so zen. Hey, listen, he'll call when he's ready. I hope it's going to take a while, because we got a couple more months to run off that clock. Quote, we are seeing a really meaningful realignment, as I would refer to, of Canadians booking less to the U.S. year to date. We've seen on average a 37% decrease of new bookings from Canada to the U.S., Durakovic said. Yes. Quote, Canadians do love traveling to Mexico. It's now number 2 after domestic travel. So we're rocking it here, Canada. We're making domestic travel number one and travel to our second, well, I won't say second most important trading partner in that China is our second largest trading partner, but our second most important trading partner in that they are our partners in the most important trade deal that we have, and they are also our partners in the Common Front. And let's not forget that the last time that the United States was negotiating this thing, and that the United States really wants bilateral deals, the United States started negotiating one-on-one with Mexico and was planning to leave us behind. And it was Mexico who insisted, no, no, this is a trilateral deal. So you get Canada back in this room. Thank you very much. So the Mexicans had our backs. So we need to have them. And hopefully Doug Ford no longer bellies up to a mic making statements saying, it's an insult to be compared to Mexico. And, because it is not. They are our friends and our partners, and we should start treating them as such. All right. Back in Manitoba, where the winter has settled in, Charles Burt and Marilee Morlarge don't regret their decision to visit Puerto Vallarta for the first time. You really won't. It's a fantastic place. There's tons to do around the whole area, so you won't be bored, their travel agent Cindy Prokopich told them over a Zoom call. Good, perfect, Millard said with a grin. The couple said they're not ruling out traveling to the U.S. again someday. Quote, when he, Trump, is gone, we'll probably go back, Burt said. We have a lot of friends down there, Millard added. But now that they've got the international travel bug, we will, why did I say comma, quote, but now that they've got the international travel bug, quote, we will probably continue to look at that option, Burt said. And there you have it, kids and cubs. So yeah, Beaver Sweetie and I taking a vacation. First 3 weeks of February, we'll be leaving on the 1st. Not sure if I will be doing shows while I'm there. I am thinking I'm maybe doing a short sort of like half an hour or hour thing, because there are some hours of the day down there where it's just too damn hot to be out. And I could probably set up and do that. So I haven't completely decided yet whether or not we will be having some live from Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, the Daily Beaver Morning Show. But I have a feeling that going a full 3 weeks without my DamFam might be a little rough too. I might get the shakes, suffer from a little withdrawal. So I might check in. We'll see. But I will bring what I need in order to be able to do some little MacGyvered things for you. And then whether or not I do them depends on how much vacation, how seriously I'm going to vacation, whether it's going to be a total disconnect or whether it's just going to be, a couple of weeks in different climes and just a change of scenery. So, you can have a breather. Mr. Jim, go take me with you. You are more than welcome. Hurt Mexico, but not Australia. Oh, my friend, we do. I'm going to talk to Alex about Australia. Hopefully, we can do that next year, because as you know, my good friend, for those who are watching, Pete here is watching us from Australia. And Aussie Pete is the person that has designed our logo and all that good stuff. So if you like our logos, thank him. He's the one that did the wonderful work. But our good friend Aussie Pete recently became a homeowner. Ooh, congratulations, my friend. I hope that you are loving your new space and that you are starting to make happy memories there. So I am thinking of it because Aussie Pete knows that it has always been my dream to visit Australia. In fact, 3 times in my life I've had plans and they all blew up on me. But I want to go to Australia, and hopefully in January, so I can also realize another dream of attending some matches at the Australian Open, because I'm a tennis nut. So yeah, I am. We'll talk about it, Alex and I, because it is a dream I've always wanted to go. So either January, not 2026, because that's short notice. January 2027 or 2028, my friend, depending, because Alex teaches sometimes too, and he's not able to get away. But we will make plans to come to Australia, because it is on my bucket list, and I cannot think of a better person, other than my Beaver Sweetie, of course, to be in Australia with. I love my good friend, Ozzy Pete. He's a real gem of a guy, and any time spent in his company is wonderful time. So I'm very excited about the opportunity. I have not forgotten my friend. I have not forgotten. Uh, yeah, Ozzy Pete has come to Canada several times to visit. I owe him at least one. Although I am still a little trepidatious because I keep on reading that in Australia, everything that either slithers, crawls, or runs wants to kill you. So, or maybe not wants to, but can kill you. So I am going to need a crash course on how to survive Australia before I go. All right. More news, kits and cubs, for you. Title of the show today: Promise Made, Promise Kept. Well, there's a reason for that. You know that one of the things that the conservative movement, and particularly this bunch of conservatives, have been criticizing for the longest time is anything having to do with immigration. Um, they have made immigration the scapegoat for most of the financial issues that have been happening in Canada over the past 5 years. Um, it's inherently racist in its foundation. Okay, there were some elements of truth to what they were saying in that the amount of people that we had coming was putting some strain on housing and hospital services, and therefore we needed to make some changes. But there's a way to have that conversation that doesn't allow for scapegoating. If you're talking about specifically supply and demand, you can simply talk about numbers, right? And everything would be fine. But this is different. There's a color and texture to the discourse when it comes from these conservative benches that are less than kind. Let's use that as a term here. So yeah, there has been a lot of scapegoating and national sentiment about immigration, which was usually pretty good, has taken a bit of a hit. Now, of course, the part that the conservatives always omit from the story is that a lot of this had to do with temporary immigration, student permits, that type of stuff. And we also that a lot of this was at the request of the provincial premiers. The provincial premiers wanted these higher immigration numbers, but then they didn't do the work of preparing for the people that were coming in. And then when that blew up, well, they blamed the federal government. So under Trudeau, they made some decisions to make some caps on immigration, and they went into place. And now there have been some adverse consequences as a result of that, in particular with our colleges and universities, with enrollment foreign students, particularly colleges, and a lot of them, particularly in Ontario, but it might be the same in other provinces, that had been chronically underfunded for a long time, and the provincial government, rather than doing the hard work of actually governing and making decisions, decided, hey, let's just keep on upping the number of foreign students because we charge them more, and we'll fill the hole with that money. And that works much like hey, let's spend more in healthcare and fill that hole with money we have from oil. When you use resources that are limited, finite, and which could have sharp shifts in them to fund essential services every now and then, when there is a shock in the market, the essential service takes a hit. So there was a shock, and we needed to dramatically make cuts to temporary immigration. And then the full weight of the chronic underfunding for years and years and years and years and years and years made itself felt, and colleges are just canceling programs after programs after program after program. Universities are as well. Well, Pierre, just the other day, posted a tweet talking about immigration being out of control, but according to Catherine Tunney of CBC, Canada's population decreased over the third quarter of 2025, driven by a drop in non-permanent residents, according to new data from Statistics Canada. Preliminary data published Wednesday shows a decline in the population of about 76,068 people, or 0.2% between July 1st to October 1st. Statistics Canada says the decrease is mainly due to a reduction in the number of non-permanent residents, a result of changing government policy. In 2024, the federal government announced it would be slashing the number of non-permanent residents allowed into Canada and lowering the cap on international student limits. Since getting elected this spring, Prime Minister Mark Carney has vowed to get immigration under control. Statistics Canada says the decrease is attributable to record high outflows, meaning permits expiring, compared to inflows or permits being issued. Most notably, it saw a drop in people who were on a study permit, about 73,682 people, followed by those holding a work and study permit. Statistics Canada says the drop in non-permanent residents was the largest it's seen since it began keeping comparable records in the third quarter of 1971. Again, let me repeat this. The largest drop in non-permanent residents since records started being kept in 1971. And still, Pierre is trying to convince people that immigration is out of control right now. Liberals promised that they would handle it, and they did. Promise made, promise kept. The promise was being kept the entire time since they made it. But that entire time, Pierre kept on trying to convince people, or lie, because you can't spell Poiliev without lie, that immigration was out of control when it was being handled. That's conservative for you. They just invent their own reality. At least this brand of conservatives. And when I say conservative, kids and cubs, I mean conservative politicians, not Canadians who vote conservative, but the actual machinery, the movement. Every province and territory had fewer non-permanent residents on October 1st than July 1st, the numbers show. Ontario experienced the largest decrease, losing about 107,280 non-permanent residents, followed by British Columbia, 26,242, and Quebec, 15,989, then Alberta, 10,605. More shifts to immigration are coming. The federal government signaled in its November budget that it will significantly reduce the number of temporary residents allowed into Canada over the next few years. It's aiming to admit only 385,000 temporary residents next year and 370,000 in the following 2 years. The dialing back follows public polling suggesting Canadians' consensus on immigration is changing amid a housing and health care crisis. On that front, Kits and Cubs, this was from October 21st, 2025 here. And it says, this is John Paul Tasker. That says, the number of Canadians who say the federal government is letting in too many immigrants has spiked in recent years, and among conservative voters, the swing is even more dramatic, according to a new poll from Environics Institute. Gee, I wonder why the swing is more dramatic within conservative circles. Maybe it's because their conservative politicians have been actually ramping up the negative talk about immigration and immigrants. Quote, the Canadian consensus that adding more newcomers is generally a positive development is crumbling, and it's largely driven by mostly conservative voters moving to a starkly more negative position on the immigration system. The number of conservative voters surveyed who say that there's too much immigration has doubled over the last 5 years from 41% to 82%. Just goes to show what beating a drum beat every frickin' damn day can do for you. The highest number Environix has ever recorded for any demographic group in 48 years. It has been tracking opinions on this question. That 82% figure is significantly higher than the overall number of Canadians who say too many immigrants are coming in, which clocked in at 56% this year, a number that has moved sharply higher in the last 5 years. Keith Newman, a senior associate at Environix Institute, says there has been, quote, a very striking sea change in opinion over a very short period of time on immigration in the post-pandemic era. The declining support comes after the last Liberal government turbocharged the number of newcomers, which caused the population to grow by about 1 million people a year for 3 years in a row, according to Statistics Canada, at the request of the premiers. The article forgot to mention. That surge has tested the housing market, healthcare capacity, and Canadians' patience, and it's Conservatives in particular who are responding most negatively, said Newman. While there has also been a post-COVID uptick in Liberal and NDP voters who say the government is admitting too many people, those figures actually declined slightly in the last year. We have seen over the past 2 decades growing division on immigration, and this year shows that gap has widened noticeably. So, for any voters who are not conservative, they realized that there was a stress at some point, were starting to get upset, saw that the problem was being dealt with, and got less upset about it. But the conservatives, they just decided to get upset because there were people of different colors to blame for it. And now that the problem is still being solved, they're still choosing to be upset and still choosing to blame the people. Wow. But yes, overall, there has been a little bit of a decrease in the number of people who feel that there's too much immigration since maybe, in the last year or so, a slight decrease. Hopefully, we'll get back to the regular, our usual state. Usually, it's about 60% of Canadians who agree. Normally, it's about between 30 and 40% of Canadians who claim that there is not too much immigration in Canada. So it's I'm actually having trouble figuring out this graph. It's the sentences are written in negatives, so it's actually I'm trying to do the math in my head. So what does that mean positively? But yeah, hopefully we'll get back to the regular means. It's usually about, like I said, a 60-40 split on that, and usually in favor of immigration, and that has sort of flipped over the last little while here. Quote, we have seen over the past 2 decades growing division on immigration, and this year shows that gap has widened noticeably, Newman told CBC News. In the past, how a person votes federally didn't tell you much about their views on immigration. In 2001, for example, 44% of Liberal voters and 37% of New Democrats said the number was too high, not far off from the 47% of Conservatives who said the same in that year's Environix survey. But the firm, which has been asking the same question of Canadians since 1977, reports that the gap between Conservative, Liberal, and NDP voters is now largest on record. And if I could show you the graph, which I can't here, but we see that sentiment peaked in 2004 for Liberals and NDP, thinking that there was too much immigration in Canada, and Liberals, it was just over 40%, and conservative NDP was probably about 35%. And in the last year, between 2024 and 2025, that has dropped. The Liberals in pretty much in equal proportion, but for the Conservatives, the sense that there's still too much immigration is still climbing. It's about 80% of voters, conservative voters. In 2022, it was just over 40%. So over the last 3 years of Pierre, basically saying, immigrants are the problem, immigrants are the problem, immigrants are the problem. Well, the conservatives have definitely swallowed that hook, line, and sinker. And now that we've been dealing with the issue for 2 years, and now that we are actually having negative population growth, so it's no longer the issue Pierre claims it is, more conservatives still believe that it is still an issue. So now they're just outright being lied to. Well, that graphic is something. While the reasons vary greatly, Environics found the most commonly cited explanation was frustration with the government's handling of the file and unease with how the volume of immigrants has affected the economy and housing. There's no evidence to suggest this opposition is driven by racial animus or xenophobia, Newman said, adding that only a small number of immigration skeptics surveyed cite the threat to Canadian culture as the reason to dial back immigration. Plus, there is little difference in the opinions of people who are first-generation Canadians and those who were born here, he said. And it's not just Environics that is tracking shifting political opinions. A recent survey from Nanos Research found that nearly 3/4 of Canadian respondents now support reducing the number of new immigrants. Abacus Data, another polling firm, has also been tracking the crumbling support. What was once a relatively marginal political issue has climbed up on the list of national priorities. Nearly a third of voters surveyed last month said immigration is one of their top 3 issues. Former federal conservative immigration minister Jason Kenney said, quote, the single biggest failure and worst legacy of the Trudeau government was taking the broadest pro-immigration consensus in the democratic world and turning it upside down. With help, of course. Right, Jason? With help. The help of people who poisoned the well. Right, Jason? Jason Kenney is extremely skilled at telling only half the story. He said some voters, including many newcomers, are migrating to the Conservatives, quote, because they believe the Liberals have completely screwed up the immigration system by allowing a massive spike in international students. The number of active study permits hit 1 million in 2023 in temporary foreign workers. I wouldn't characterize this as some sort of rural old stock Canadian reaction to immigration, Kenney said of the polling data, but rather a sign that the government needs to cut numbers further to restore trust. Quote, we need to significantly reduce intake and weed out the fraud. There is. Fraud is not a big issue. They need to stop talking about that. To save the immigration system itself. For much of the last 25 years, immigration was something of a third rail in Canadian politics, with few elected officials publicly questioning its value. On that issue, too, there's been a major about-face. The federal Conservatives are responding to the dramatic shift in public opinion with a new suite of policy proposals. Leader Pierre Poilievre is calling for hard caps on newcomers that go beyond what the Liberals have already announced, an end to the temporary foreign worker program, and a crackdown on bogus refugee claimants. The party's immigration critic Michelle Rempel-Gardner is also demanding the government tighten up who's eligible for birthright citizenship to weed out so-called anchor babies born here to foreign nationals with no legal status. Michelle, you've been spending that too much time in Oklahoma. You're starting to sound American. Prime Minister Mark Carney has also put the immigration system on notice, saying the levels have not been sustainable and more focused approach is required. Quote, it's clear we must improve our overall immigration policies, he said at a caucus retreat in Edmonton last month. Phil Triadopoulos, a professor of political science at the University of Toronto Scarborough, who studies immigration and conservative politics, said the Conservatives said relatively little about immigration numbers when the influx was at its highest point last year. Quote, and it seems like they've decided to make up for that silence. Quote, the party is much more strident in their criticism of the government and using language that's a lot sharper than what we're used to seeing in Canada, he said. I said it right the first time and I'm tripping the second time. Triadopoulos said it's a tricky balancing act for Poilievre because, quote, there's a wellspring of support among the party's base for a different approach to immigration, but a tougher stance on newcomers has, quote, burned them in the past. Barbaric cultural practices snitch line, for one, for example. Swearing in ceremonies, for another example, perhaps. He said past conservative campaign programs to create a well, there you go. He said past conservative campaign promises to create a barbaric cultural practices hotline, push through a so-called niqab ban, and revoke the citizenship of terrorists may have cost them some seats in immigrant-heavy areas of Toronto in the 2015 election. Quote, there must be some trepidation and anxiety in the party's strategy sessions about how best to be critical of immigration without driving away support from new Canadians who they absolutely need if they're going to win a majority government, he said. They are dipping their toes in, but I think they're still very cautious for good reason. Indeed, good reason. back to the success that we've been having in reducing those numbers. Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenships Canada's own polling suggests Canadian support for immigration levels decreased to a low not seen in 30 years. The opposition Conservatives have made immigration a key issue in the House over the last few months, with leader Pierre Poilievre calling for the temporary foreign worker program to be dismantled. As of October 1st, Canada's population sits at about 41,575,585 people. So, therefore, kids and cubs, promise made by Trudeau, by the way, promise supported by Mark Carney, and promise kept. How cool is that? Now, as a result of that, Pierre Poilievre will be crying in his watered down beer. Oh no, I'm sorry, Pierre Poilievre, if he drinks, it's probably not anything that is watered down. And the word if in that sentence might be doing a lot of heavy lifting. Yes, I'm petty. But this is going to make Pierre cry because he is losing one of his favorite whipping horses. Right? He can no longer say that immigration is out of control. The numbers don't support him. Now, not that that's going to stop him, right? But he can't use that anymore. The other number that he can't use is that GDP per capita thing that he's been talking about all the time. Conservatives just started dropping out that metric. Well, GDP per capita has been dropping. Well, yeah, when you add 1 million people 3 years in a row, yeah, GDP per capita is going to drop. You took a big number and you made the denominator bigger. So therefore, the result is smaller. It's just basic math. The larger number by which you divide something, the smaller the result is. So now that population has decreased 0.2%, well then, GDP per capita all of a sudden is rising. And now, I'm not sure what the Conservatives are going to point to as a metric to show that to try and gaslight us and to believe us that we are tanking. Because if GDP is going up, and if GDP per capita is going up, and inflation is remaining at or around or sometimes even below the 2% target, and if the cost of shelter is going down, cost of food is still going up, unfortunately, but inflation on shelter is going down, and wages are rising faster than inflation, and what does he have to complain about anymore? That's rooted in observable reality. Yeah, he is losing his main arguments. According to the Financial Post's Pamela Heaven. What a great name, Pamela Heaven. I like that. I like that a lot. I'm not sure why it wants me to sign in. I'm just looking at an article. Okay, very weird. Sorry, my computer. I have some data for it here, but it is asking me for a sign in. Microsoft is asking me for a sign in order to read a Financial Post article, which strikes me as very weird. Hold on, I'll see if I can fix this for you here, kids and cubs, because it is some. Oh, come on. I'm sorry, kids and cubs, the computer is being a little capricious here at the moment. Oh my God. You're killing me. I asked it to do one operation and it did two. Geez. Okay, let's try that one more time. Gee, I've never had a more difficult time trying to copy and paste than I'm having right now. And it's live and everybody can see it. And that is not good. But according to the Financial Post, they are reporting, if I can get this damn thing to work. This is a comedy of errors here. Oh my God. There we go. Okay. So sorry about that, kids and cubs. That was really weird. According to Pamela Heaven of the Financial Post, it says here, I'm not sure if there's a portion of the article missing, but let's start here. Back when Canada's population was booming, swelling consumer demand, and the country's labor supply, the economy looked good on the surface. But below the surface, rising interest rates and unemployment were creating conditions for Canadian households, quote, functionally indistinguishable from a recession, said Royal Bank of Canada economists in a report out yesterday. Even before the trade war shook Canada's economy per capita or per person, gross domestic product was declining, even as overall GDP grew by 2% in both 2023 and 2024, a situation RBC calls historically unique. And I just want to point out here that when the article says yesterday, they mean December 15th, because I'm a couple of days after this article has been written. But still this week, I think that was Monday, if I'm not mistaken, that the report came out. Canada gained 2.1 million residents between 2022 and 2024, and this decade's high population boom masked the harsher reality going on in the background. Households saw their buying power shrink, pressured by higher interest rates and even higher inflation. As consumer demand weakened, more people were competing for fewer jobs and unemployment soared. Canada might not have been in a recession, but for many Canadians, it sure felt like it. Quote, now the reverse is happening, said RBC economists led by Francis Donald. Quote, per capita GDP, a better measure of how individual households and workers experience the economy, is on track to post an increase in 2025 for the first time in 3 years. And there is a graph here that was supplied by Statistics Canada and RBC Economics, and it has two colored bars that have two colors, with light blue indicating per capita GDP growth and dark blue indicating population growth. And then there's a yellow bar that goes across those, or line, that talks about Canada's GDP growth. So in 2023, when Canada's GDP growth was at 2%, per population growth was just under 3%, and per capita GDP growth was just under -1%. In 2024, GDP growth was still at 2%. Population growth had slowed a tiny bit, but was still on the closer to 3% side of between 2 and 3%. And per capita GDP growth got better, but was sort of like at, around -0.5% as opposed to -0.9%. In 2025, population growth was lower than 1%, closer to the 1% side of 1%, but lower than 1%. So that's a dramatic shift. Yes, Canada's GDP growth dropped from 2% to 1.7%, but per capita GDP growth started being positive, about 1%. In 2026, population growth was practically zero. Practically zero. And per capita GDP growth was about 1.3%, with GDP growth being at about 1.3%. That's what's being predicted for 2026, I should say, sorry. That's the projection for 2026. And for 2027, the projection is that population will start growing a little bit, something like maybe 0.2 or 0.3% instead of zero, with Canada GDP growth rising to 1.7%, and per capita GDP growth rising to close to 2% on its own. The curbs on temporary resident arrivals have sharply lowered the number of consumers and workers, but while this will reduce total GDP growth, it should not significantly impact per capita growth and unemployment, said RBC. In fact, the underlying measures of the economy are showing encouraging improvement, they said. And here, the reason this is important here is that while GDP growth, as the article mentions here above, is a good metric if you want to look at how the economy is doing in the immediate, in the moment. It better measures how individual households and workers are experiencing the economy. But like I said, it's less reliable metric for other things, and it's a metric that can swing because, again, how the denominator, like, again, if you understand fractions, right? The denominator, the larger it gets, the smaller the result is. So by playing with immigration, either boosting or cutting it, you change the GDP number. It doesn't really give you an indication of how much better the economy overall is doing, right? Just the regular GDP number there we need. But once you start dividing it by people, when you have wild swings in population, the number swings with it. So we have conservatives blaming liberals for the longest time here, that everything was going to pot. GDP per capita sucks because of the immigration policy. Well, now we have a new immigration policy, and you can bet you're not going to see Pierre Poilievre running in front of the cameras talking about how the liberals are so wonderful and deserve a prize and to be awarded and deserve your vote again for bringing us into a situation where we're now in rising GDP per capita. And all they had to do was cut immigration. That's all. They didn't have to invest in anything. They didn't have to. And that's why I was saying it was a disingenuous metric when the conservatives were using it to try to get us to dislike immigrants and blame them for everything. Because all you have to do is play with the number. So I'm eagerly awaiting, if I was Pierre Poilievre and I was giving an interview Pierre Poilievre style, I bet you journalists are just waiting, camping out by all the doors of all those conservatives that kept on saying that, GDP per capita was in the was in the gutter. Well, I hope you're all there now getting their views now about it, now that we're doing so well, right? That's where you're going to be, right? Oh, man, I tell you. Back to the article here. Unemployment appears to have peaked, falling to 6.5% in November, down 0.4 percentage points from the year before, as we've reported on the show. And spending is up. Spending growth in the second quarter of this year rose by 2.4% per capita, the fastest pace in 3 years, said RBC. The improvement in per capita GDP represents a significant milestone, said the economists, and they are, quote, cautiously optimistic it will continue to improve. Oddly enough, trade ranks among their reasons for optimism. While the economists don't expect the United States to reverse tariff hikes, they also don't expect significant increases as political appetite for this eases ahead of the November 2026 midterm elections. Keeping the Canada-United States-Mexico agreement exemption is crucial, but RBC argues this is equally important for U.S. importers. Canada's inflation rate is holding steady except for food prices, which are climbing at their fastest pace in 2 years. The price of food purchased in stores rose by 4.7% year over year in November, the fastest rate since December 2023, while overall inflation held steady to 2.2%. It's important to note there on that 4.7% number. The thing with food inflation that you have to notice, remember, is that even though the overall number is high, food inflation also has a K-shape to it, if you want to look at it that way. The main culprits here for this rise in food inflation is beef and fruits and vegetables. And of course, with beef, well, the size of the global herd has decreased because it's harder to grow feed for them because of the weather and droughts and all that kind of stuff. And, it takes a while, once you've culled a herd, to get it back to where it was before. It takes years and years. And then, of course, with the rising global middle class, there's a growing number of people around the world that want to add more protein to their diet. So you have increasing demand and much lowering supply, and less ability to maintain a high supply if there isn't places to graze. So beef is going up. It has nothing to do with any one particular government. It's going up all around the world, right? And fruits and vegetables, well, it's December and we're in Canada. We don't grow that much during this period. So we import a lot, and we tend to import a lot from the United States. And while the United States is charging a tax on everything it imports, so fruits and vegetables, right? And then within those fruits and vegetables, there are specific ones. So you can avoid some of the food inflation by avoiding certain products. Like, for example, if you're eating much more pork than you are beef, you are reducing your costs. Now, you may like beef and, like to treat yourself to it or have it more often. And, in terms of your quality of life, there's a negative impact there because you can't eat what you prefer. And that can be frustrating. But you can make choices seasonally depending on what is a higher price today. But there are certain things in which you can't. If that inflation starts hitting basic staples like eggs or bread, milk, flour, cooking oils, then you start getting into trouble, right? We can all decide that we're not buying grapes for 2 or 3 months while the price is too high and wait for the price to become a little more reasonable. There you can make strategic choices, but you need milk. Or, as we've been seeing lately, formula. Certain prepared products also is the other reason that prices have skyrocketed, and formula was one of those reasons as well. So, right, there are certain things you can choose to not buy, and there are certain things you can't choose to not buy because they're essential staples, and it also depends where that inflation is. So you have to look at the number. 4.7 is not good in any shape or form, but there are reasons that number is rising. Okay, sometimes they're seasonal, sometimes they're environmental, sometimes it has to do, like I said, in the case of beef, there was culling of the herd, like it was with the price of eggs for a while. There was a lot of culling of birds because of the avian flu, right? And that needs to work itself through the system. Now, fortunately, it takes a lot less time to raise a chicken to the age it needs to be where it can start laying eggs than it does to raise cattle to be the size it needs to be for it to become food, right? So you gotta look into the layers here, but still, regardless, when regular inflation is at about 2.2%, and it was expected to come in at 2.3% by the economists, so the rate came in better than expected. But when food inflation is at 4.7, and again, everybody needs to eat, 2.2 is a bit of a cold comfort. Let's put it that way. Quote, to put the impact of rising grocery costs in perspective, the overall inflation rate excluding food is at a mild 1.85% year over year. So inflation for everything except food is at 1.8%, but the major number is at 2.2 because of food. So the high level of food inflation actually results in a 0.35 boost to the overall headline number. Quote, meat, coffee, sugar, chocolate, and now fruit prices are the biggest drivers of this renewed upswing in gross price inflation, states the article. And I am going to go into the article specifically about the inflation rate because these points of data come out at different times. This is Jordan Gowling of the Financial Post as well here, stating that food prices rose at the fastest rate since December 2023 last month, even as Canada's headline inflation rate held steady at 2.2% for the month. The price of food purchased in stores rose by 4.7% year over year in November, up from 3.4% a month earlier. So that's the sharp 1.3%. That usually indicates that there's either some type of shock in the system or a major seasonal change. Prices for fresh and frozen beef were up 17.7% from the year before, and coffee was up 27.8%. The higher beef prices were driven in part by low herd size in North America, while price pressures on coffee have been driven by a combination of bad weather conditions and U.S. tariffs on coffee producing countries. Quote, higher grocery inflation was mostly a product of supply disruptions, said Royal Bank of Canada senior economist Claire Fan in a note. Severe drought in parts of Western Canada in earlier years has thinned off the size of cattle herd in Canada, while dry weather in Brazil and Vietnam curbed coffee production and exports to the world. The continued pressure on food prices came as overall inflation held steady, and while measures of core inflation showed signs of cooling for the first time in months. Factors putting downward pressure on the consumer price index included decelerating price increases for services compared to October and lower overall prices for travel, tours, and accommodation, the latter driven mainly by a base year effect due to the spike in hotel prices for the Taylor Swift concerts in Toronto in November 2024. Rental prices also rose at a slower pace, climbing 4.7% in November compared to 5.2% in October. Core measures such as CPI median rose by 2.8%, the first time it has dipped below 3% since May, while CPI trim also rose by 2.8%, the first time it's been below 3% since March. CPI excluding food and energy rose by 2.4% last month, while CPI excluding gasoline rose by 2.6%. So when the governor of the Bank of Canada, when he announced that the interest rates were going to remain stable at 2.5%, the Bank of Canada's overnight lending rate remains stable at that level. They were stating that inflation, they have the sense, is under control and the situation will be improving over time. So despite the food inflation here, CPI median and CPI trim, these numbers are showing that the projection going forward is that inflation will probably be remaining around 2.2% or slightly lower here. So, I'm just going to repeat this sentence so that you have the information together. Core measures such as CPI median rose by 2.8%, the first time it has dipped below 3% since May, while CPI trim also rose 2.8%, the first time it's been below 3% since March. CPI excluding food and energy rose by 2.4% last month, while CPI excluding gasoline rose by 2.6%. Service Credit Union chief economist Charles Saint-Arnaud said the 3-month annualized price of core inflation had eased to 2.3%, the slowest pace since August 2025. Quote, the core inflation momentum below 3% suggests that the stickiness in core measures and price pressures is consistent with the Bank of Canada's inflation target, he said in a note. That's basically a fancy economic way of saying what I just stated. In simpler terms, the Bank of Canada held its policy rate at 2.25% at the last rate decision on December 10th, citing a resilient economy and contained inflationary pressures. Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem said the policy rate, quote, was at about the right level to keep inflation at 2% and help the economy through a structural adjustment brought on by the trade war with the United States. Looking ahead, Macklem said the bank does expect some choppiness in headline inflation in the new year, reflecting the temporary GST-HST holiday on some goods and services a year ago. The central bank also said that as of right now, underlying inflation remains around 2.5%. Quote, despite choppiness in headline inflation, we expect excess slack in the economy will cause core inflation to gradually ease and return to 2% by early 2027, said Oxford Economics senior economist Michael Davenport in a note. Davenport added that the central bank is likely to look through this temporary choppiness and will keep rates on hold for 2026. Still, inflation was running above 3% for 42.2% of the items in the CPI basket in November. The price of cellular services rose by 12.7%, up from 7.7% in October. Gasoline prices declined at a slower pace, falling 7.8% in November compared to a drop of 9.4% in the month before. So there you have it, kits and cubs. You have immigration numbers following to the point where we actually have negative immigration growth. We have the main numbers for inflation that seem to be under control. We have low interest rates from the Bank of Canada. There was a lot of people this year and next year are the 2 years where a lot of people are going in a 5-year cycle are going to be renegotiating their mortgages. And while a year and a half ago we were talking about this time of year or this year having a mortgage cliff, it's now more like a mortgage hill. People will not be going back to renegotiate mortgages with the Bank of Canada rate at about 5%, right? It's at 2.25. That's going to make life much easier for the next few years when people renew their mortgage. It's not going to be as scary as people thought it was when they were looking at that, a year ago or 2 years ago. So that all these metrics are overall positive. Of course, as we keep on saying on the show, when it comes to economics, particular at this particular time, again, K-shaped economy. If you are renting versus whether you own a home, you are experiencing this very differently, especially if your home is paid off. Whether you own stocks and bonds in your portfolio versus you don't, has a lot. If you have any precious metals in your portfolio, you've been really happy over the last year and a half as the price of gold has just spiked. But if you don't, you've seen none of that windfall. So, a lot of people are experiencing this economy differently. And then again, depending where you are in the country, if you are in Windsor, for example, the economy is way different for you than if you are in Ottawa. If you are in Sault Ste. Marie right now, the economy is way different for you than if you are in, Montreal or Vancouver or Halifax, right? There are in British Columbia, I think Western WFT, Western Forest Timber, I think it is, announced that it was closing permanently yet another sawmill, right? If you live in those areas, um, smile. Inflation is down to 2.2%. Smile, GDP per capita is growing again. That won't even buy you a cup of coffee, right? So, the macro number is good. The numbers are good, and that's important because that's the overall waters in which we're swimming in, and that does make it easier for people to find new work. It makes it easier for people to readjust. All these things are good. It's much easier to be nimble and find other solutions and find other ways in an economy that is overall doing well, with a couple of sectors being hit and regions being hit. So, I mean, it's better than the alternative. But as the mayor of Sault Ste. Marie, Mr. Schumacher, Matthew Schumacher, I believe his name is, Shoemaker, has stated, when you're a town of 72,000 people and the biggest employer cuts 1,000 jobs, where do those 1,000 people become absorbed into the work system? Where? Right? You're remotely located, and it's a town of 72,000 people. It's not like there are 300 different industries that are there competing. Like, where do you go? What do you do in that case? So yeah, it's not the overall numbers. The macro numbers are good, but the micro experience is wildly different depending on your age, how much you own, right? Again, I think I stated it on the show, but it sort of creates this situation, or did at the time, because the numbers have changed. But when Pierre was at the maximum of his popularity, um, if you owned stuff, you were more likely to vote liberal because they had policies that were going to help you preserve what it is that you owned. And if you didn't own stuff, then you were more likely to vote for conservatives who were, campaigning on burn it all down. Right? So we need, as I keep on saying, to be empathetic, right? Just because things might be going well for you or you're handling it well doesn't mean that that's necessarily the same for your neighbor down the street or in another neighborhood in your city, right? Just because, things are good in the city you live in doesn't mean things are good in the town someone else lives in, right? We need, as Canadians, we need, and this is tough to do in this type of situation, right? Where there's an ominous threat that is perpetually present, right? And can launch its venom at you like a viper at any given time. Just, walking down the street, doody doody doo doo, boom, just get T-boned, right? That's Trump. That's the United States right now, right? They thrive off that. Makes them happy when they destabilize someone. So that creates a mood and a tension, some weight on shoulders collectively that sometimes puts blinders on us and gets us to focus on, it's like it's like the tyranny of the immediacy, right? Focus on the thing now, and focus on the thing that's affecting me now, rather than looking broader, using our proprioception, right? To, yes, I vote for me and I vote for the issues I care about, but I also try to vote broader, especially if things at the moment happen to be good for me. Well, then, yeah, I do like to vote. So, I don't, it's like Christmas, when you write to Santa and you say, oh, Santa, I don't really need anything this year, but, I would like, for the hungry children to be fed, right? One of those types of things. Sometimes you're in a position to be able to vote that way too. You say, you know what, I'm doing pretty well, but I notice that there's a problem with people who don't have homes. So I'm going to vote for someone who's going to take care of that, because in the end, that does help me, right? If people who are currently unhoused suddenly become housed, indirectly or directly, that does improve my quality of life, right? So it's we have to be compassionate when we're talking about economics. We have to really make an effort to think broader than just ourselves and our own household, or just those in our immediate neighborhood. A policy that might be good for your specific neighborhood might be terrible, right, for a whole class of people. So we need to just be sure, yes, put on your own mask first so that you can help other people. But if you have that luxury of deciding not only for yourself, but thinking a little more broadly, we need you right now, because there are some people that are going through some very scary times. A lot of uncertainty. The rug has just been pulled out from right under them, and we need to be there for them. We need to support them. Because it is in our best interest in the long run to do so. As we keep on saying, it always costs less to do the right thing the right way the first time. So then let's not be insensitive to those of us who are having a particularly rough time. Okay, kits and cubs, let's see what else we have for you today in the world of politics. Because, there's some stuff going on out there. I've been waiting to hear more about the meeting between the Prime Minister and the premiers on the political shows last evening. I'm not sure if the meetings were still continuing, or if the readouts just hadn't been supplied yet. So there wasn't much news about it, and not seeing too much here other than a deal between Mark Carney and Doug Ford to reduce the regulatory burden on the Ring of Fire to speed up Ontario projects. I was really hoping that we would get some information about how the vibe was between David Eby and Danielle Smith. But according to Liam Casey of the Canadian Press here, Ottawa and Ontario are set to sign a deal Thursday that will reduce the regulatory burden on large projects, including the road to the Ring of Fire, the Canadian Press has learned. Thursday, we mean yesterday here. Provincial and federal government sources who are not allowed to speak publicly say Ottawa has agreed to eliminate any duplicative work on its impact assessments on large projects. A draft agreement posted on the Impact Assessment Agency of Canada's website says the goal is to work together to implement the, quote, one project, one review, and one decision approach. Webequie First Nation and Martin Falls First Nation are leading environmental assessments on 3 roads that would connect the provincial highway system to their communities and mining activities in the mineral-rich Ring of Fire region in northern Ontario. In a side deal on the Ring of Fire roads, the federal government has committed to completing its impact assessment on the same timeline as the provincial environmental assessment, as both First Nations say they are set to begin building the roads in 2026. Neither the province nor Ottawa responded to a request for comment. Prime Minister Mark Carney and Ontario Premier Doug Ford will sign the deal at a ceremony in Ottawa yesterday. The Canadian press learned about the details during a recent trip to the Ring of Fire region as part of a reporting project supported by the Pulitzer Center. Both Webequie and Martin Falls say the roads will help lift the flying communities out of poverty, though other nearby First Nations are not on board with the plan. A source in Ford's office who was not allowed to speak publicly about the yet-to-be-announced deal says the changes will dramatically speed up big projects across the province, including roads, highways, and mines. Quote, "This is huge, not just for the Ring of Fire, but for mining in general and building roads and highways," the Premier's office source said. "It will be 10 times more transformational than any major project." A senior federal government source who likewise was not authorized to speak publicly about the deal says it's all about eliminating duplication. The standards will remain stringent and rights and protections will be upheld, the source promises, including for the roads to the Ring of Fire. The federal government has launched a regional assessment working group to better understand the impacts of development, but the province in Webequie and Martin Falls says it will not affect the road. The two governments aim to work together on assessments of navigable waters, species at risk, and migratory birds, all along in the federal purview. With these deals in place, the province is no longer expected to use controversial new powers to designate the road to the Ring of Fire as a special economic zone. That provision would have allowed the province to suspend provincial and municipal laws with the goal of speeding up construction of a proposed mine in the Ring of Fire. The area is said to be replete with critical minerals, but many other First Nations are against development in the region, including the roads and the mine they would lead to. Wailu, the Australian mining giant, is nearing completion of its feasibility study on 2 proposed connected underground mines at its Eagle's Nest site. Wailu and Juno Corp, a Canadian junior mining company formed in 2019, own the vast majority of the more than 40,000 claims staked in the Ring of Fire. 2 other companies, Teck Resources, which recently merged with Anglo American, and Canada Chrome Corporation, also hold a significant number of claims. The companies say they found a wide variety of critical mineral and base metal deposits, including nickel, copper, chromite, titanium, platinum, vanadium, iron, and gold. And some of these are words that I've said for the first time, chromite and vanadium. I have no idea what these things are. They are used to make all types of batteries, cell phones, stainless steel, semiconductors, drones, satellites, data centers, and computers. Well, I can see why we would want them. Meanwhile, Ontario has finalized its regulations to allow for the designation of special economic zones, which will come into force January 1st, 2026. That was a key component in Ontario's Bill 5 omnibus package that passed into law last spring. The province gave itself the power to suspend any and all provincial and municipal laws in an effort to speed up the construction of large projects, particularly mines. I have to say that I am having trouble with these types of laws and this type of manner of legislating. We have a law. Oh, well, the law doesn't allow us to do what we do. Quick, change the law. Oh, we didn't write it well. Quick, change the law again. We're seeing that in Alberta with regards to, for example, citizens' initiatives and petitions or whatnot, right? Alberta had one rule for Thomas Lukasik, first forever Canadian petition, but new rules for the people who wanted to petition to put on a question on the ballot that would be pro-separation. Everybody that signed these, that started these recall exercises against MLAs, mostly UCP MLAs, had to pay $500 for that privilege. Now, if you want to do that, it's $25,000. They just changed the rules, because that makes that super accessible to the citizens. You need $25,000 just to file your petition. So, yeah, we have all these rules to protect us from the environment, and now we've just passed this other rule that says we don't have to listen to those rules. Wink. I I don't like that. Because if you want to change the rules, actually change the rules. Tell us what the new rules will be, and then vote on it. Not just, we have to respect these rules, except when we decide we don't. Then you don't have rules. You just don't have rules, right? Because it becomes like a abusive use of the notwithstanding clause. Yeah, we know you got rights, but we don't care. So we're just going to write this bill. We're just going to slap the notwithstanding clause on it, and then boom, here we go. And now we got free reign for the next 5 years to do whatever we want to you, right? I don't like that way of doing things. If you want to take away rights, pass a bill, take away rights, get people to debate it, get people to vote on it, make it court eligible. And if it's not constitutional, well, then too effing bad. You don't get to do that then, right? I'm not. I have a problem with we have rules until such time we decide that these rules are inconvenient, and then we decide these rules don't apply. Because it just creates a permanent structure for just saying, well, no matter what we do, there will be rules, and the rules will make things more difficult. So let's just not have any rules for anything ever. It just creates that type of dynamic at the moment. It allows our elected officials to avoid doing the hard work of actually legislating. You sought a mandate to govern, frickin' govern. Legislate. Don't try to find loopholes out of legislation that already exists. Don't try to temporarily suspend rules. Just legislate. Write the new rules, put some thought into it, make them solid, make them good, consult appropriately, and then tell us what the new rules are, and let's get some consensus and let those rules hold for a while. This is not difficult. Just turning around and saying, oh, you know what? Or go through the process of actually repealing the law. That's inconvenient. And let there be the debate on that. But just writing bills that say, you know what? Oh, yeah, we think this. We respect laws, except for these ones when we don't want to, or we've decided they're inconvenient, or we decided we just don't want to bother, or it's just too hard. The standard keeps on getting lowered. So, not a fan. All right. Ford has mused about using it for its proposed using it, Bill 5, and the provision in it that makes it such that you can just forego or suspend certain laws. Ford has mused about using it for its proposed traffic and transit channel under Highway 401. The special economic zone idea sparked outrage among the majority of First Nations in the province who saw it as a threat to their way of life. The new regulations give Economic Development Minister Vic Fedeli the power to choose which areas could be deemed a special economic zone, which company or individual can be deemed a trusted proponent, and which projects would be part of the designation. And none of that whatsoever raises any red flags about fraud or directing contracts to insiders. Those decisions will pass through cabinet first. Quote, special economic zones will bolster Ontario's economic advantage by cutting red tape, accelerating approvals, and protecting the jobs and industries that keep our province resilient and competitive, Fedeli said in a statement. Hopefully, kids and cubs, you are still hearing me and not lots of noise. Outside the door, it seems that here at the Beaver Lodge, the superintendent staff are doing some vacuuming, and I hear it extremely loudly. I'm just hoping that my mic is not picking it up as well. So if there's some weird sound going on right now, that is the source of it. Just wanted to let you know. So there you go, kits and cubs. That seems to be the major point of news with regard to that meeting that I can see at the moment. There have been, like I mentioned before on the show, the Prime Minister has given some year-end interviews to Rosemary Barton, which I assume they're talking about it a lot in the shows, but which I assume will be showing on Sunday. Vashi Kapelos has been talking about an interview that she did with Pierre Poilievre that will air on CTV's Question Period on Sunday, but that we've seen some excerpts from, and it's not good for him at all. And then I believe the Prime Minister had also given a year interview with Patrice Roy of Radio-Canada, the one in which he admitted that we probably would not be reaching, that we don't have the ability to reach our climate goals for 2030 and 2035 based on the plans that we have now. And that's why we need to make some changes. One of the reasons he may have been coming out with that on the days that he did is because on the 17th, federal data was going to be released that would show that our climate targets were out of reach. According to David Thurton, and in other words, the Prime Minister was getting ahead of this report. Canada's legally binding climate target seems to be out of reach, new data released from Environment and Climate Change Canada suggests. The department's greenhouse gas emissions projections are a critical signal of whether the country is on track to achieve its climate goals. The report's projections show Canada will fall well short of its 2030 climate goal, just halfway to its target of a 40 to 45% reduction below 2005 levels. With the government's current climate measures, Canada is on track to reduce its emissions by 21% below 2005 levels by the end of this decade. If the government implements additional climate policies, the report projects the country could see a 28% reduction. The news comes just months after an unprecedented warning from Canada's leading climate think tank, which found the country won't meet its 2030 target. The Canadian Climate Institute's September forecast estimated that the country was on track to reduce emissions by 20 to 25% below 2005 levels by 2030. Reacting to Wednesday's report, the Institute said it shows the country is well off track and needs immediate policy delivery, which was that which Mark Carney promised Elizabeth May to get her vote on the budget, and it doesn't seem that it's going to happen. Prime Minister Mark Carney also foreshadowed the news in year-end interviews, including on Wednesday with the CBC's chief political correspondent Rosemary Barton. Wednesday's Environmental Canada update is the first since Carney took office. Since then, Carney has removed key planks from Canada's climate plan, citing cutting the consumer carbon tax, pausing the electric vehicle mandate, backing additional LNG exports, and potentially supporting the building of another bitumen pipeline to the Pacific coast. As a result, this report is worse than in recent years. Under Carney's predecessor, Justin Trudeau, the country was on track to slash its emissions to 34% below 2005 levels. The report lands a decade after the signing of the landmark Paris Agreement, an international climate pact that committed the world to limit average global temperature from rising above 2 degrees Celsius and to pursue efforts to hold it to 1.5 Celsius. While those numbers may sound small, every fraction of a degree of warming, according to the international climate scientists, accelerates deadly heat waves, droughts, forest fires, and flooding like the seen in Abbotsford, British Columbia over the last week. Now, in this article here, there's an important detail. It says that with the measures we had in place, we were on track to slash our emissions by 34% when our goal was 40 to 45, and that we needed to add a couple of things to it that we could do over the next 5 years. The Prime Minister's rhetoric on this one, the current one, is that the current target, the current plans weren't helping us, weren't going to reach the goals, so we had to do something else. That's a little disingenuous in that, and certain commentators have made this point, that a lot of the things that Justin Trudeau had put into place were just starting to come online, or were going to come online in a year or two. And therefore, we didn't have the data to show how well those measures would have done. The closest that we would have had was these projections that showed we got to 34%. Well, if what we're doing now, after reducing all of that, only gets us to 24 or something, we have to replace that 10% and still need to find the rest that would get us to 40 if we are going to meet our legally binding targets. And a lot of the things that the Prime Minister is doing, while they are important in the fight, they are things that are going to start showing up years from now, 5, 6, 7 years from now, and not immediately, right? As I mentioned on a previous show, if we have a copper mine that's coming online that is zero emissions, we don't get we do get the benefit of the zero emissions for that, what that is producing now, but we don't get an overall net benefit until a mine that is producing at high emissions actually closes. And then as a nation, we are producing the same amount of copper with much less carbon, right? So that process, however, for a mine that pollutes more to reach the end of its life and then close down, and a new mine that we're building is to maximize its output, that there's a gap there, right? And you don't see the full benefit until that gap is removed. Same thing about building the pipelines. A lot of people are saying, well, let's maximize what's going on in TMX first and then build another pipeline. Well, you can't do that because it takes a lot of time to permit and build a pipeline. And you probably would have to start building the new pipeline before the current one is at full capacity. You would probably want to start construction on a new pipeline so that it would come online just as the one that exists reaches full capacity. So the one that's at full capacity can remain at full capacity, and you can start adding capacity to the other one, right? You'd want to time that so that there's not a gap. So you can't wait until TMX is running at capacity to start thinking about building another one, because then you might have 7 to 10 years where you have a gap. So these things do need to be planned in advance and do need to be started in advance, right? Again, these are subtleties of these discussions, that don't fit well into a 30-second headline, right? Or a 30-second sound clip. So yeah, this report was clearly going to come out saying that we were not going to meet it, and therefore Prime Minister Carney got a little bit ahead of that in those year-end interviews by making these statements. And I guess that's why Stephen Guilbeault was going all around saying, that preparing the train for even that by saying, we're going to have to come clean about what's going on here. With regard to trade, just on a side note, because in those interviews, Prime Minister Carney revealed a little bit what happened in that meeting when he went for the FIFA draw, and it would appear that based on the discussions that were there, that there is no significant push that anybody can detect to rip up CUSMA. That doesn't mean that won't happen, but at the moment there seems to be no signal of that, because that's one thing that we are worried about. However, the trade representative from the United States has made public what it is that they are looking for. So this is the first time that the United States has actually publicly stated what it is that they seem to be looking to get out of us. This is from JP Tasker, CBC News. U.S. President Donald Trump's point person on trade laid out a series of conditions Wednesday that Canada must meet in order to extend the Canada-U.S.-Mexico agreement when it comes up for review next year, revealing publicly for the first time what the administration expects Prime Minister Mark Carney to do to keep the pact for the long term. U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer told Congress that CUSMA has been, quote, successful to a certain degree, but there need to be changes before Trump agrees to extend it for another 16 years or revert to yearly reviews, something Canada is eager to avoid given the resulting annual uncertainty. Quote, I don't think we can say that USMCA is an unqualified success, Greer said in his remarks, which were shared publicly after his closed-door meeting with lawmakers on Capitol Hill. While Greer said the deal has turbocharged American exports to Canada and Mexico, yet we're screwing them over and cheating all the time. They are up 56% since 2020, according to his figures. Quote, the shortcomings are such that a rubber stamp on the agreement is not in the national interest. A rubber stamp on any agreement is never in any national interest. That's a dumb statement. Greer said his office will, quote, keep the president's options open, negotiating firmly to resolve the issues identified, but only recommending renewal if resolution can be achieved. That rhetoric is a departure from Trump's past characterizations of the trilateral trade deal he brokered in his first term. At the time, the president called CUSMA, quote, the best agreement we've ever made. Greer said the U.S. will take aim at two major Canadian policies: the Online Streaming Act, which brought online platforms like Netflix, Spotify, and YouTube under Canadian broadcasting rules, and the supply-managed dairy sector, among others. Um, yes. With regards to the Online Streaming Act, the American companies do not, or Trump at least, I'm not sure if it's coming from the companies, do not like the fact that they have to contribute money to creating Canadian content that will be on their platforms in Canada. Seems to be their major beef. And then, of course, supply managed dairy, which, again, is getting a lot of talk, particularly in the province of Quebec, because everybody seems to be speculating that a certain person whose last name is Wiseman will become the Canadian ambassador to the United States, replacing Kirsten Hillman when she steps aside, as she announced that she will. And Mr. Wiseman, if that is the case, which nobody is confirming or denying, but it seems that that would be the case, that it would be him, is someone who is on record as not being a big fan of supply management. And in his interview in French, Prime Minister Carney, when presented with that by Patrice Roy, says, but he's not a big fan of supply management. Mark Carney turned around and says, yes, but I am. So I think Mark Carney's signaling here, whatever it is that this person personally believes, I'm the boss, I'm running the show, I said I would protect supply management. We're even looking at it as something in Parliament that we are doing, passing a law saying that supply management will be protected, and therefore it's very nice that the person that I'm hiring, for all the skills and abilities that they have, has this personal conviction on supply management, but he will not be acting on that personal conviction so long as he is working for me. Thank you very much. So there you go. Greer said that for CUSMA review to be successful, Canada must bolster market access for U.S. dairy products and address Canada's exports of certain dairy products, an apparent reference to claims that Canadian sector allegedly dumps milk ingredients cheaply, undercutting American producers. The other thing you need to know, however, with regard to those tariffs, when Trump complains, oh my God, they got 200% tariffs on milk, that's only if the Americans reach a certain quota and pass it. Everything past that amount is tariffed at that rate, and the Americans have never reached the quota. So it's kind of interesting to watch the Americans go, we want more access to your dairy market, when they're not even using up the access that they actually have already. Sounds a little weird there. While he didn't call for supply management to be dismantled entirely, something that Canada has repeatedly stressed as a non-starter, he told Congress that Canada has policies that, quote, unfairly restrict market access, and they must be dealt with. Canada does allow some U.S. dairy products to trade into Canada tariff-free, but there is a limit, and American suppliers have never reached it. Still, the U.S. dairy lobby wants those rules loosened somewhat. Action for action's sake, I guess. Greer also said that Trudeau-era streaming legislation, quote, discriminates against U.S. tech and media firms, and there needs to be some sort of revision of that policy, although he was not prescriptive in his remarks. That legislation was brought about to force U.S. web giants to contribute financially to the domestic media ecosystem and make Canadian content readily available on their platforms, which have become ubiquitous as traditional TV, cable, and satellite providers shed subscribers. Greer also wants Canada to address the provincial bans on the distribution of U.S. alcohol beverages, which came about as a form of protest to Trump's aggressive trade action on key sectors like steel, aluminium, autos, and lumber. Well, you know what you have to do, sir, for that. If you want the liquor boycotts to stop, then you need to remove the sectoral tariffs. You know what to do. We've told you a long time ago. We've been remarkably consistent. I'm not sure why you haven't gotten the message yet, but okay. Those liquor boycotts have been hugely impactful. U.S. spirits giant Brown-Forman, the maker of Jack Daniels, has seen its Canadian sales plunge by more than 60%. The ban has caught the attention of American officials at the highest level. Pete Hoekstra, aka Ambassador Fuckface, the U.S. ambassador to Canada, has previously said those provincial liquor restrictions and the massive decline in Canadian tourism to the United States are, quote, why the president and some of his teams referred to Canada as being mean and nasty to deal with. Okay, because of some of those steps. Ontario Premier Doug Ford, meanwhile, has been firm, saying he will keep the U.S. brands out of the LCBO until there's a deal for tariff relief or there's a renegotiated CUSMA in place. Quote, if they don't, then they aren't getting any booze on our shelves, he said recently. As well, it seems that there was a push in Ontario to get Doug Ford to sell the American booze that had been taken off the shelves, especially some of it that might be soon expiring, and to use that money and donate it to food banks, I believe. But Doug Ford does not want to sell any U.S. booze whatsoever. I guess I don't know haven't heard him say it, but I guess the argument there would be, well, if we are selling the U.S. booze, even donating the money to charity, that U.S. booze that we sell displaces non-U.S. booze that we could sell, and we want to continue selling non-U.S. booze in order to make this hurt. So no. Hopefully, however, if I was Doug Ford, I would have said, it's a great idea to support those food banks, and I probably would have written a check for the amount that we could have sold the booze, just to finish the little PR loop there and look good. But I don't think he did that. He doesn't have people advising him well. Oh well. Greer's document is silent on lifting the so-called Section 232 tariffs that Trump has levied on Canada's critical sectors. Bilateral trade talks to get them lifted broke down earlier this year when Trump erupted over Ford's anti-tariff ads featuring Ronald Reagan. Greer did, however, highlight concessions Carney says so far made to Trump as part of the drive to get some tariff relief, including axing Canada's digital services tax and rolling back retaliatory tariffs. As part of the CUSMA review, Greer said that the Trump administration is also demanding Canada address, quote, discriminatory procurement measures in Ontario, Quebec, and British Columbia, quote, and complicated customs registration that some Canadian companies must adhere to when receiving U.S. exports. Lastly, Greer said Alberta must revisit its, quote, unfair treatment of electrical power distribution providers in Montana. You ever notice that these people never say how things are unfair? Canada cheats. How? The way you provide electricity is so unfair. How? Another issue that is mentioned in Greer's remarks, but not explicitly spelled out as a condition that must be resolved to get a renewal, is that he calls, quote, regulatory imbalances with Canadian fishers in the gray zone near New Brunswick and Maine. There have been long simmering tensions between the two countries over lobster catches in that part of the Gulf of Maine, which has been claimed by both Canada and the United States. In a positive sign for Canada, Greer acknowledged the overwhelming consensus from the North American business and labor groups who testified at a series of hearings on CUSMA earlier this month, is that agreement should continue in some form. Quote, many explicitly called for the agreement to be extended, Greer said. However, at the same time, virtually all stakeholders also called for some sort of improvement to the agreement. Greer left open the possibility of separate bilateral deals with Canada and Mexico as opposed to a comprehensive trilateral pact like what exists now. Although he said some continental-wide issues like rules of origin, critical minerals, or economic security alignment are best addressed collaboratively with all three parties. So there you have it, kits and cubs. A little bit of news here about what's going on with CUSMA, the trade negotiations. Right now, it is starting to look like it will remain a trilateral deal rather than three bilateral deals. And I say three because Canada and Mexico would have to have one between them. Although, as I mentioned before, we are somewhat protected by virtue of the fact that we do have an agreement, both being part of CPTPP. And we have been doing more bilateral exchanges over the last little while. We could also just lift a lot of the text that is in CUSMA, put it in a separate document that we've already agreed to, and say, this is the basis from which we're starting a new bilateral deal with Mexico if we explicitly felt the need to have one hammered out. Were that to be the case, we are not going to be starting from zero if that happens. But it would be better to have a trilateral deal, because if we are in a bilateral deal with the United States, then that's just a recipe to get me bullied at whim. At least in a trilateral deal, every now and then, Mexico and Canada can stand up together and say to the United States, sorry, that's not going to work out well for us. And maybe we get some modification. But yeah, again, interesting developments on that front. One, I'm not sure if it's the last thing that I've got for you here. I know I'm going to be going over time today, but that's okay. Um, yesterday, we were under time, so we will have a little extra time together here. Um, there is an analysis that has been provided by Aaron Weary. I like him a lot, actually, uh, with regard to parliamentary majorities, because right now it seems that the conservative shtick on floor crossings, and by the way, I can't show it to you today because I don't have clips, but there is a lovely clip of Michelle Rempel Garner a few years ago stating why it is, you know, floor crossings existed and why they were a good and healthy thing, uh, uh, which is the complete opposite of what they are saying now, of course. But right now, conservatives want you to believe that gaining a majority through floor crossing, well, that's undemocratic. Okay, let's do a little civics with Mr. Beaver here, kids and cubs. Um, Under the Westminster parliamentary system, a floor crossing is a floor crossing is a floor crossing. There is absolutely no wording, none, zip, zilch, nada, whatsoever, anywhere written down that indicates that should the situation be such that in the case of a thin majority or minority, that a government either win, gain, or lose a majority via a floor crossing, that particular floor crossing is no different than any other. Oh, but it's different if the floor crossing is going to give someone a majority than whether or not it has no consequence on party standings, really, that is material. No, actually, no. There is no difference in our system. There is no difference. That's just one of the vagaries of our system. If it just so happens that you have a parliament that is, 172, I don't know, 171 to 171, and you need one more, and you happen to get it through a floor crossing, nothing makes that illegitimate. Nothing makes that undemocratic. The floor crossing that tips the balance is viewed the exact same way in our system than a floor crossing that has no material effect whatsoever on party standings. There is no difference. Conservatives who don't like this because it's not the cookie's not crumbling their way have a problem with it, want you to believe that it's undemocratic or underhanded or sneaky or shady. It's not. It's just our system. That's why we keep on saying on the show that it's a good idea if you claim to love Canada to take it out on a coffee date and get to know how it works. Makes it a lot more difficult for duplicitous politicians to pull the wool over your eyes or try to make you believe things that are not true. A floor crossing is a floor crossing is a floor crossing. The stakes on the next one are admittedly very much higher than they were when Leona Alislev crossed the floor to the Conservatives, for example. But that's not the floor crosser's fault. So, political parties are not supposed to be prisons. We elect someone to represent our interests for a full term, and we trust that person to act in our interest. Should that person that we elect to represent us determine that their party or their leader has gone sour, in our best interests, that person can leave the party. There is no reason for which that person should lose their job for making an interest that they genuinely feel is in the best interests of Canadians. There's no reason that Canadians or constituents should lose their elected representative if they decide to make a decision that is bold, yes, can be controversial, yes, in the best interests of their constituents. So you do not sign a blood oath to the party. You do not tattoo the team color onto your body. That jersey is supposed to come off from time to time. Just as we don't, every time when a politician's views on something evolve, yes, there's always the core people that says, "Well, you believe that then? How can you believe that now? You must be a liar." No, it's just a situation that you know what? There was certain information that was available. Now there's new information I've taken. I have factored it in. That information is material in terms of changing. Affecting how I see the situation, and therefore I have integrated this new information and I have changed my perspective, as normal people do, right? We are not beholden because we voted one way on one subject that we're locked into voting that way for the rest of our lives. We can change our minds. We can learn more. We can decide that, oh, you know what? I thought this was good, but now that I'm learning more about this, this is actually better. I don't want that anymore. I want this better thing. But you always stood by wanting that thing before. I can't believe it. What a betrayal. No, I'm just realizing that there's a better thing. That's it. And that's all it's got to be. It doesn't have to be more complicated than that. Right? So they can weave these stories and these tales. Oh my God, it would be so undemocratic. It's illegitimate. It's like, no, it's perfectly legitimate. Our system has always, 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 always provided for this. Now, this may be the first time that the vote totals are so close that a floor crossing could result in this situation where government flips from minority to majority. But that was always a possibility. The other greater than 300 times somebody crossed the floor. It was always a possibility that those elections could have been just as tight as this one. Right? It's like these people want us to believe that the people that wrote the Westminster parliamentary system, that developed this system, that thinks of absolutely freaking everything, it would appear, this suddenly, when they were talking about floor crossings, never thought of the idea, gee, but what if we have a tied house? Ooh, maybe we need to make special rules for floor crossing in that situation. I'm sure someone thought of that and decided it was a non-issue. These are all the rules that we've agreed to play by before we had the election. If you voted without being familiar with the rules, maybe that wasn't a good idea. But we all knew the rules. So that conservatives are crying now, I have no sympathy. Because while they're crying, they're lying and gaslighting. According to Aaron Wary, a few days after Michael Ma decided to cross the floor to the Liberals, oh, by the way, Michael Ma gave this wonderful interview, wonderful because I'm petty again, interview to City TV in which he wants us to believe that when he went to that party on Thursday night, or the Conservative Party that night, he truly was a fully committed conservative. And then the next day, that's when he decided to become a liberal. Because again, the conservatives are still being childish about this. We're at a week now since this guy has crossed the floor, and they're still talking, oh my God, he didn't pay for his ticket, Secret Santa. It's like, grow up. You are literally confirming everything that people are saying about your party, that you're just not serious, not a government wedding, not ready for prime time, all about grievance, childish. My God, the Conservative Party of Canada is an adult daycare program more than it is a political party at the moment. But yes, Michael Ma apparently wants us to believe that when he was at the Conservative Party taking these pictures and all this kind of stuff and dancing the night away, that he was a committed conservative and something happened. And then the next day he decided that his fortunes would be better placed. And everybody's turning around and saying, it's disingenuous and all that kind of stuff. And I'm sitting there and going, well, gee, what the hell happened at that party? Because that's what I'm wondering. Who took him aside and said something to him at that party that so turned him off that the next day, right? You got this whole other side on the conservative spectrum that says, well, you know, Michael Ma is a Chinese asset now, right? Why don't you talk about the China angle? if Michael Ma is a Chinese asset, either one or two things happened. He was a Chinese asset when he was a conservative MP as well, and either the very thorough conservative vetting system missed it, or the conservatives knew it and were okay with it, or Michael Ma suddenly became a asset of the Communist Party of China between the conservative Christmas party and the liberal one. Yes, some guy who's so therefore, and who looks Asian, so therefore he's a Chinese asset. Yeah, conservatives, that's probably not a good avenue for you either. Just saying. So yeah, just like everybody's saying, he was at the Christmas party and he seemed fine. Well, clearly you didn't know your colleague well. You didn't get to know him because clearly he wasn't. And for Michael Ma turning around going, I was a conservative at that party, but the next day, it's like, sir, unless you actually picked up the phone the next morning and actually called Mark Carney and said, hey, can I meet you? When you guys actually met, I would have trouble believing that. Now, I don't know when it is you scheduled that meeting with Mark Carney, but if that meeting was scheduled before the Christmas party, you had to be somewhere in the back of your mind thinking of it. And if you're somewhere in the back of your mind thinking of it, you're probably not fully committed. Probably not fully committed. But hey, if you went to that conservative Christmas party and somebody said something to you that just stuck right in your craw and, was an aha moment, and it's, oh my God, I just realized something. And the next morning you woke up and you picked up the phone, you called Mark Carney and said, can we talk? Or Tim Hodgson. Then your story stands up. But we kind of have to take your word for it. But at first blush, it seems a little incredible. But anyway, a few days after Michael Ma decided to cross the floor to the Liberals, Pierre Poilievre was asked whether the loss of another MP was a problem for his leadership of the Conservative Party. On the contrary, Pierre argued, it was a problem for the leadership of Mark Carney. The Prime Minister was, in Poilievre's word, trying to manipulate his way through backroom deals to get a majority in the House of Commons, without, of course, pointing out the irony that Pierre achieved his second seat through two backroom deals, if one would claim them. Well, one was a backroom deal, the one he had with Damien Couric. The other one was pretty much straightforward and out in public, with Prime Minister Mark Carney said, I won't play games. I'll give you your early by-election date if you can find a seat. And ironically as well, let's remember that the Conservatives keep on talking. We're talking for a few weeks now about the Liberals trying to provoke a costly election. And now we have Conservatives for whom we've already spent an extra $2 million so that Pierre can get a seat, wanting us to spend another $6 million more for the three people that have left him. Well, I guess $4 million more because only two have crossed the floor. But when the third one leaves him, we're going to have a by-election anyway because he's quitting politics altogether. So it will be $6 million. But they want us to spend an extra $4 million because two people left their party and they just can't cope or deal with reality. Liberals want to call an early election. That's terrible. That's costly. Oh, these two people left us. We need to call a by-election in those ridings. They've betrayed their voters. Let's spend money on the two people that they've lost. Those elections are not too costly to hold now, another by-election. Should be able to leave without having a by-election. But the Liberals wanting to provoke themselves falling so that they can have a run at a majority in a full election, that's a terrible thing. At the same time, Pierre, in his interview, says, well, my message to Mark Carney is if you want to achieve a majority, you need to do it through an election, not through backroom deals, the election that you just said that we should go into in order to get a majority for the Liberals, because it would be big and costly, as you are demanding that we shell out $2 billion every time somebody crosses the party away from you. It's a mess. It's a mess. The Conservatives do not know what they think. They're literally throwing spaghetti against the wall and hoping it will stick. And here we go, the quote. My message to Mark Carney is if you want a costly majority government, then you have to go to the Canadian people to have them to vote for it, not do it by dirty backroom deals. And if the Prime Minister did do that, then you'd be complaining that he was provoking a costly, needless election. It's always a trap. with Pierre Poilievre. It's always it's a this, and that's bad, or it's that, and it's bad. It's always a trap. That's why the Liberals, very smartly, the last time he presented the trap, just decided not to play the game. And basically blew up his game by telling Canadians what he was doing, what the game was, before they even started to play it. Quote, a few days later, Carney was asked whether he would be comfortable gaining a majority as a result of floor crossing. And he gave a brilliant answer in French to Patrice Roy, and similar to Rosie Barton here. I'm comfortable commanding the confidence of the House of Commons. In conclusion, Canadian parliamentary democracy is a land of contrasts. So in other words, Mark Carney clearly focused on the fact that it is his job to have the confidence of the House. Period. Whether that is through a majority or being able to work through a minority, he's fine with it. He is comfortable commanding the confidence of the House. Either way, that was a brilliant answer because that is actually the correct answer. In conclusion, Canadian parliamentary let's try that again. In conclusion, Canadian parliamentary democracy is a land of contrasts. These dueling interpretations might be influenced by partisan interests, but they also raise a useful question of civics. Is there a bad way to gain a parliamentary majority? Poilievre's argument is that Canadians did not vote for a Liberal majority might have a ring of truth, but it's also the case that not a single ballot cast this spring included the words majority government or minority government. Voters might be motivated by their preferred party or leader, but they do not elect governments. They elect individual MPs. We vote for the person, no matter how much conservatives want you to believe it is the opposite. We vote for the person. And it is those MPs who then decide who gets to govern. The confidence of the House is ultimately what matters. Carney has so far been able to win it on every important vote, but that task will obviously get that much easier if the Liberal caucus, the MPs formally pledged to support the government, grows to 172 or more members. It also helps them pass legislation and get it through, because when you hit 172, the composition of the committees change, and you get to control them as a government. It is also the case that no major party's history is free, quote, of backroom deals. Poilievre was, for instance, a member of the Conservative caucus when former Liberal MPs David Emerson, Wajid Khan, Joe Kamutsi, and Leona Alislev chose to become Conservative MPs either directly or after parting company with the Liberal Party. Andrew Scheer, Poilievre's House leader, was the leader of the Conservative Party who happily welcomed Alislev. If Conservatives were so inclined, they could propose legislation to restrict or ban the practice of floor crossing, but Poilievre was among the Conservative MPs who voted against an NDP bill in 2022 that would have forced floor crossers to run in a by-election before switching parties. So someone actually tabled this bill in the House of Commons at some point. The Conservatives had time to put their money where their mouth is, what they claim their current religion is, back in 2012, and they voted against it. For all the reasons I've been telling you that you should not vote against it. That you should vote against it. That floor crossings should remain a thing. That way you can free yourself from the tyranny of your party if your party decides to go that way. Those were the arguments they were making then, when they had an opportunity to vote to ban floor crossing, but they didn't. Because at that time, floor crossing was helping them. And I believe that is the era from which Michelle Ruppel, that speech that's going, the clip of that speech from Michelle Ruppel-Garner that's going on online, probably came from that push in 2012 when they had an opportunity to legislate that, make that the case. As the Liberals have recently pointed out, Stephen Harper defended the ability of MPs to switch parties after Emerson's move in 2006. Quote, I believe members of Parliament should have that freedom and be accountable to their constituents for their decision at the next election, he said, which is how our system was designed. It's funny how the Conservatives know the rules when the floor crosser goes their way, but when the floor crosser goes the other way, suddenly they just forget that they ever did know the rules. For years, observers and MPs themselves have worried that party leaders have too much power and backbench MPs have too little freedom to think and act independently. Part of the argument against restricting an MP's ability to switch parties is that doing so would only exacerbate that broader problem. That was one of the key points that Michelle Ruppel-Garner was making, actually. It might also be noted that the Ethics Commissioner also found no rules had been broken in the case of Emerson. Nonetheless, it might be argued that the current situation is different. The defections of Emerson, Khan, Kamuzi, and Alislev did not result in the Conservatives gaining a majority in the House. But it might be useful to ask what Polyev would do if the current situation was somewhat reversed. What if the Liberals had won a bare majority, 172 seats in the last election, and then 3 Liberal MPs decided they wanted to cross the floor to the Conservatives? Would Polyev refuse to accept them on the grounds that the voters had elected a Liberal majority? I think we all know what the answer to that is. If the Liberals are able to gain a majority from floor crossing, it might be a situation without precedent, at least at the federal level in Canada. During the First World War, a number of Liberals crossed the floor to join a Union government led by Robert Borden, but in that case, Borden's Conservatives already had a majority in the House. The closest point of comparison might actually be the last Parliament. Justin Trudeau's Liberals won 160 of 338 seats in the 2021 election, but later negotiated a confidence and supply agreement with the 25 NDP MPs. Together, they constituted a majority, and the Trudeau government was able to maintain the confidence of the House through the fall of 2024. Conservatives attacked the New Democrats for supporting the Liberal government, but the Liberal NDP deal wasn't fundamentally undemocratic or legitimate. Carney hasn't pursued a similar agreement with another party, but he might end up with something like the same result. One of the ideas that has been floated around is that given that the Liberals are now 171, how about they make the Speaker of the House a New Democrat in exchange for providing the New Democrats with a little bit of funding so that it could operate better. Seems like a supply and confidence agreement by another name, even though it isn't exactly one. Apparently, according to Don Davies, if he's asked in an interview, that never happened. They never stated that. They're not up for that. Also, the previous sort of claim of make us an official party, and then maybe we'll vote with you. But that is a question of that's a question that would have to go to the Board of Internal Economy, which involves other parties, and you can bet that the Conservatives and the Bloc probably wouldn't see it in their interest to give a competing party access to more resources so that it could do its job better. So that's probably not on the table. Like I said, speakership could be interesting as an offer, but if the Liberals are convinced that there might be 2 more or 3 more ready to come at some point soon, why would they do that? If they get more than one, they can maintain the speaker position and have the majority at the same time, although it would be a very, very thin majority one, and maybe they would like to have extra cushion, right? So we'll see whether or not something like that happens. There could be a situation in which, like for example, as well, if when someone crosses over again and the Liberals get to 172, in order to strike the new committees, Parliament will probably have to be dissolved and a new session of Parliament will probably have to be started with a new speech from the throne and all of that to reestablish the committees with Liberal majority on all of them and Liberal leadership on all, pretty much all of them, if not all of them, were that to happen, if it became a majority. So that's another vagary of our system here. That we probably would have to close this session and open a whole new one at that point. So here we go. Let's get back to the article here. Just going to make sure I'm in the right spot here. There we go. The obvious difference in this case, of course, is that MPs who ran under one party banner are now moving themselves to another. And since modern political parties tend to express themselves in uncompromising and unnuanced declarations, particularly when it comes to denouncing each other, switching sides can easily raise questions about one's credibility. In his CBC interview, for instance, Polyev read aloud from statements Michael Ma made just days before changing parties that were critical of the Liberal government. He did the same thing in the House of Commons, reading statements from Chris D'Entremont. Of course, we know that all these statements are written for these members, and then they just repeat. These are fair questions to be asked of any MP who switches parties, but there are also fair questions to be asked whenever an MP or party deviates from the promises they ran on a campaign. MPs who cross the floor and the party leaders who welcome them might worry about endangering cynicism. engendering cynicism. Voters aren't necessarily wrong to wonder if they've been misled. On the other hand, Carney's argument is that MPs are simply attracted to what his government is doing, like the Liberals keep on saying. Sorry, we're not pitching, we're just catching. Chris D'Entremont has linked his defection to Poilievre's leadership of the Conservative Party, and MPs can fairly argue that they are not merely elected to be representatives or placeholders for a given political party, that they have some freedom, perhaps even some responsibility, to exercise their own judgment. Either way, as Harpy suggested nearly 20 years ago, MPs and parties can be held accountable for their decisions at the next election, just as they might be held accountable for anything else. And there you go, kids and cubs. A solid piece by Mr. Aaron Weary on this front, and I wanted to bring it to you because I do like the quality of his work, and it deserves to have more people be exposed to it. All right, kids and cubs, I believe that that's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you love listening to us because we love making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless. So please tell your peeps and poops all about us. We really appreciate it when you do, especially when you include a little bit of yourself stating why it is that our content resonates with you. Now, kids and cubs, if you are a busy beaver, busy beaver and beaver, and you are wanting to take on the day, but that doesn't leave you the time to sit down and watch the Daily Beaver Morning Show with the best DamFam in all the podcasting. Well, worry not, because thanks to the Ray Girl, kids and cubs, we have Podpage. That's podpage.com/the truenortheagerbeaver with a hyphen between each one of those words. And when you go there, or if you scan this QR code that is about to appear on your screen, have to do it twice, 3 times, 4 times. Come on, appear. There you go. It will not appear. There we go. Now it has appeared. If you scan that QR code, that will bring you to our Podpage site. And there, when you click subscribe, when we have something fresh off the podcast bandwidth, it comes directly to you. And therefore, you can pop us in your ears and go take on the day. Now, kids and cubs, if you would like to help us, we could definitely use your help. And you can do that by traveling on down to the True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated's YouTube page. That QR code that just appeared will bring you right there. And there you can smash with our buttons. Remember, if you're watching live, smash now. That way you don't have to remember to do it before you leave. Like, share, and subscribe. Give our buttons a little tickle. It makes us happy because it helps us with the algorithm. And we also love seeing our numbers go up. So thank you for all of your support. It means the world to us. And for those of you who contribute through Super Chat or buy memberships, and thank you for the rose today, by the way. That was absolutely delightful. We are absolutely delighted by every single contribution, and we thank you for that. Now, speaking of making contributions, kids and cubs, we do incur some costs to bring this show to you, and we would appreciate it if you were able to support us and help us with those costs. And you can do that with a donation to the Eager Beaver Lodge's Emergency Hydration Fund via our coffee page. That's coffee, ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, all in one word. And if you scan that QR code that has just appeared there, that will bring you to our coffee page where you can make your donation. And we very much appreciate that. It means the world to us because you will be doing your bit to keep your favorite beaver moist. Yum, 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 yum. A moist beaver is a happy beaver, by the way, just so you know. And tomorrow, your beaver will definitely be keeping himself moist at the PubCast. I keep on plugging it and promoting it because PubCasts are some of my favorite days with the DamFam. All right, kids and cubs. So please do go to our coffee page and help us that way. And kids and cubs, if you are doing the Buy Canadian thing, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com is our email address. You can send us a direct transfer that way. That way, your transaction remains entirely Canadian, Canadian bank to Canadian bank. No US tech bros take a share of your money. In fact, that cut comes to us, and we get 100% of your donation, which means it goes further. You buy yourself more beaver when you donate that way, and more grizzly. And that's always a good thing. Usually, I say that there could be too much of a good thing, but can you really have too much beaver? Probably. Dosing is very, very, very important. All right, kids and cubs. So we do thank you for your help. Keep your beaver moist. A little donation makes us very, very happy. Now, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com is the same address you can use to write us to let us know what you think, especially if you're not able to contribute financially, because we want to hear from you. We love the DamFam, and we love what you have to say to us. Good, bad, or ugly, we love hearing from you, and we love your suggestions for potential guests on the show. So please keep them coming. Means the world to us. And of course, as usual, we don't say it often, but if you have any questions about how the show operates or questions about politics or whatnot that you would like us to answer in our shows, don't be afraid to send them to us. Everything that you send to us, whether it's financial or in word, gets put back into the show in order to make it better. And we are not able to read, not able to respond to all of your comments, but we do read them, and we thank you so much for supplying them. It means the world to us because it's very important feedback that we get from you. Kits and cubs, let's see what else. Because I guess we're at democracy, something that you do then, aren't we? Oh no, I forgot to mention, if you want to reach us via our socials, at True Eager at the Blue Sky Beaver Lodge on the Jitter, True North Eager Beaver at Facebook, our original home, right down here in the chat. If you're watching on, not the chat, the comment section, if you're watching on YouTube, we also have the DamFam Discord, and we have Instagram as well. So hopefully, wherever you are watching from or however you are participating, you are in good company with members of the DamFam. And of course, we love to hear from you. So please write to us. All right. Because democracy is something that you do, can't bring it up today from where we are, but we have House of Commons petition 6891, if I remember correctly, or 6871. It's amazing how when I don't have it right in front of me, I don't actually remember. But that's a petition to encourage the House of Commons to table legislation that would make it such that Canadian foreign ownership laws for media would make it such that Canadian media must be owned by Canadians, operated by Canadians for the best interests of Canadians. And we definitely need that in this era of foreign interference and hostile former allies. So let's get that, some signatures on that. I would really appreciate that. And I will have the link for you on that on the Monday show when I'm back at the other Beaver Lodge. And I'm sorry that I can't post it there for you today, kids and cubs, but hopefully you will be able to find it. Or go back and listen to the end of a previous show where the link will be there. And you will be able to get it, even though that is a little more work. I recognize. All right. Words of wisdom. Come watch the PubCast. See what I did there? Yeah, that's my words of wisdom. You definitely will have a much better day tomorrow if you spend some time with your favorite beaver and grizzly at our PubCast. There you go. Shameless, utterly shameless self-promotion. Kids and cubs, it could be a tough world out there. So please be kind to and gentle with yourself. And now we are at my favorite part of the show, other than saying hello to you, and which is when I ask for your audience participation. On the count of 3, kids and cubs, could I please get you to say, Mr. Beaver, please cue the cock. In 1, 2, 3. Oh, I can't hear you. Come on. There it is. There it is. Loud and clear. How can I deny you? You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. All right, kids and cubs, a little news of Canadians who make us proud. Number one, for those of you who like to get into the spirit of the holidays and the hockey season, it seems that the roster for the Canadian World Juniors has been finalized, and we will be looking to cheer on again. A little bit less to cheer on the last 2 years where the Canadian team didn't make it past the quarterfinals. So hopefully there will be a better result this time, because I don't think the Canadians have not made the semifinal 3 years in a row, I think since 1981. I think was the last time. So hopefully we will be able to have a better performance this time around. I think as usual, things might start on Boxing Day, if I'm not mistaken, and that's always a good time, particularly during the. It's a nice thing, particularly at this time of year. Uh, Also, because we are getting ready for Milano Cortina, where we're going to have our Olympians and Paralympians competing and being fantastic ambassadors for the nations. And according to Paralympic CA, Callie Erickson and his guide Sierra Smith were among 3 Canadian entries that posted season best results on Wednesday to conclude the second stop on the Para-Alpine World Cup circuit. In Wednesday's downhill races, Erickson from Kimberley, British Columbia, and Smith from Ottawa, yes, took silver in the men's visually impaired. Alexis Guimont of Gatineau, yes, was second in the men's standing downhill, as was Molly Jepson in the women's standing race. Right behind Jepson was Michaela Guslan of Collingwood, Ontario, in third, her first podium this season. The 4-medal intake was a season high for Canadians tuning up for this March's Paralympic Winter Games set for March 6th to 15th at Milano Cortina, Italy. Erickson and Smith, vying for a first game appearance after uniting their forces in 2023, finished 0.66 seconds behind Johannes Eigner of Austria, who completed the 1,856-meter run in 1 minute 07.91 seconds. Robin Kusch of Switzerland took the men's standing event, with Guimont, a 2-time Paralympic medalist, in second. Aurélie Richard of France repeated as the women's standing downhill winner, with 6-time Games medalist Jepson and Gosselin grabbing the other 2 medals. Jepson and Guimont have medaled in their 4 World Cup races this season, so these are 2 to watch for when we get to the Paralympics. It was also a promising day for Brian Rowland of Merrickville, Ontario, yes, who placed a season's best 5th in the men's sitting downhill. He was 10th on Tuesday. The third stop on the circuit is this Friday to Sunday in St. Moritz, Switzerland. Duncan MacDonald of Powell River, British Columbia, has been named Canada's Soccer 2025 Para Player of the Year, as selected by the national team program. Quote, Duncan stepped up as captain and provided outstanding leadership both on and off the field, said Drew Ferguson, head coach of Canada's soccer para soccer national team. He played every minute of every match at the 2025 IFCPF Copa America, operating at center back, and led the tournament in tackles and blocked shots. He was a standout performer throughout the entire competition. McDonald had an excellent 2025 for Canada's soccer para soccer national team. That's hard to say. Canpara, leading Canada to a 4th place finish at the Copa America in Maldonado, Uruguay this October. So, definitely a bright future for this young man. And another thing that is good, this happened a little earlier in the year. It was in June, but the Canadian Paralympic Committee awarded 18 organizations with Sports Development Fund grants to support the development and growth of their sport programming and initiatives across Canada. Local, regional, provincial organizations from 7 provinces received grants varying from 5,000 to 15,000 for a total distribution of $200,000. So yeah, that is good stuff there. And some of the recipients of that funding, unfortunately, wanted to bring them to you, but they are not listed specifically here in this article. The funds will be used for various projects to further develop parasport pathways and opportunities for para-athletes, such as purchasing adaptive equipment, building coaching capacities and skill levels, establishing new programming, recruiting new athletes, and providing more competition and training opportunities. The Paralympic Sport Fund was first introduced in 2016-17 and has now granted more than $1.2 million to parasports organizations in Canada in support of growing the Paralympic sport system. There you have it. All right, kits and cubs, that's all I got for you today. I will say amour et bisous, and join us tomorrow for PubCast and some very, very much needed grizzly time. And with that, kits and cubs, I have to say, I am gone. And now, let's see if I am able to stick the dismount.